Welcome to the Imitation Nation podcast, where we cover all things counterfeit, hosted by myself, Shabbir and Safdar, and my colleague Sven Bergmann. Note that all statements are our own opinions, not the opinions of our employer, even the wrong ones. And welcome. How was your week, Sven?
It was a really good week. We finally in our household got rid of the cold crud that has been going around. So, but other than that, fantastically good. And it is brutally cold. I'm in Ohio and it's brutally cold here. But other than that, it's good. How are you?
I'm good, except for the 7.0 earthquake that was about 200 miles north of San Francisco. I think I was on a call with you and Stacy when it happened. And
you were.
I sit, you can't see it, but I sit inside a steel moment frame, which is a part of my house that the city required when I redid my kitchen that I install. And I did not move. I did not even notice it. But my wife, who works 3 floors up, said that the building swayed for her.
No, the most shocking to me was how calm you were through it. Did all your alarms went off? Oh, look at that earthquake. And we're like, you okay? And you're like, oh, it's fine a little bit. And you're like, no, this was it. And then 2 minutes later, ding, ding. And you're like, oh, yeah, that is a tsunami coming. You're like, are you okay now? And you're like, yeah, I'm high up enough. I'm on a hill. I'm okay. And as I was joking, I'm like, it's one of the 495 reasons why I might have a hard time moving to San Francisco, just for those facts of getting earthquake and tsunami warnings. So, but I was amazed how calm you were.
Well, it's funny. I grew up in Missouri, and I grew up with the threat of tornadoes. And people from California who think that earthquakes are no big deal are always like, "Oh my God, tornadoes!" I'm like, "Yeah." Sometimes we go to the basement. Sometimes we didn't. It just happens. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, a tornado came down the street, not my street, but a street a little farther from my house, and just picked off houses on either side of the street, skipping 2, hitting 1, skipping 2, hitting 1. It becomes random, and then you don't think there's anything you can do about it.
Yeah, we have those in Ohio as well. They're scary as well. I'm with you.
All right, so there's a couple of really good news stories I wanted to cover.
Agreed.
I want to do this first one. Customs and Border Protection working at the Port of Long Beach this week seized 3,000 counterfeit Gibson guitars with a market value of over $18 million entering the country from Asia. The seizure was done in conjunction with Homeland Security investigations in the LA County Sheriff's Department. And if you're wondering if there's a cheap Gibson available to you from Asia, a Gibson spokeswoman said that Gibson guitars are only made in Nashville, Tennessee, and Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Incredible. I wouldn't have thought the counterfeit market for Gibson guitars would be that large, but it apparently is. But the things that really amazed me about it were 2 things. One of them is that it was still I think a container load full of things, right? Counterfeits don't come in containers much anymore. A lot of it has moved to small parcels and express cargo shipments. A lot of it moves that way. So for somebody still to do cargo container loads of counterfeit, that for me was interesting. LA County Sheriff has always been a very, very, very good partner with many folks we work with on anti-counterfeit enforcement. So they've always been great about it, which is fantastic to see. And what would be interesting in the background to kind of figure out is, does Gibson actually do what a lot of other companies do and do container targeting, where they actually in the background work with customs on container targeting and can identify, hey, this container looks suspicious, and customs can pull them out? Because if you've ever been to Long Beach or any of the large ports and the sea of containers that's there, picking the one out you really want to look into, it also highlights then why it's so hard to enforce against counterfeit, because it's a sea of containers. So no, that was a very cool seizure. I agree.
What I think I didn't realize until I started doing anti-counterfeiting work, or at least reading about it and trying to understand it and help people who want to know more about it, was that Customs and Border Protection and the FDA agents and the DEA agents that work in these ports of entry have access to information about the products themselves provided by the company that helps them tell if they're counterfeit.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's like a special kind of hologram or a special invisible printing spot on the product, they actually know what that is and they can look it up. They see, okay, this is a Gibson guitar, and they can look up the Gibson documentation and say, okay, are any of these anti-counterfeiting problems present on this
Yeah.
guitar that's in front of me, which means that someone had to open the container, pick one of the 3,000 guitars, and then look at it, assuming they didn't already know that they were coming, which also happens sometimes, right? Like you get an investigation in which someone tips off CBP
Right.
or HSI and figures it out, and they're looking for it on the way in.
Well, and I think you make a great point here. And I think, for any brand owner who is listening to this, Gibson did everything right. They had a trademark. They also had a design mark because the shape of the guitar is also trademarked. The trade dress, all of that is trademarked. They properly recorded it with Customs Border Protection. They made sure it get entered into their system. They probably also entered it into the World Customs Organization system, who is a different system. Make sure it's everywhere so law enforcement can see it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Gibson, went to trainings. So actually went to ports of entry, and they can do that by themselves. There's some very great associations that do those trainings where you can join them, and they will actually help you facilitate. You go with a group. There's nothing more important than going to a port, spending time with customs officers, showing them your product, letting them know this is ideally a quick way on how you can identify it. Because to your point, if you're a customs officer and you crack open a container or you open a box and you got to figure out, what is this? How do I authenticate it? And yes, if you're not correctly in their database where I can quickly reach out to the brand owner and say, I have this, can you help me authenticate this? Then as a customs agent, I might have a hard time holding it. And I might say, I might have to let this go because I can't store all of this. So very important to do that legwork as a brand owner to make sure you get the proper enforcement.
Yeah, and in medicine, I see this too. You'll see a company come out with a new innovative breakthrough medicine, and I'll talk to the brand security people, and they'll say, yeah, like we're spending a lot of time trademarking it in all parts of the world and, documenting it for customs officials to figure out when it crosses borders, which most medicine never should anyway, because medicine is always approved for typically a single country, so it shouldn't be gallivanting around the world from country to country. It would be not approved in the country that it moved to in most cases.
Yes. Yeah. In very few instances. Like one time, I think when I went to Africa one time for a business trip, and I had to get a yellow fever vaccine, and that was during a time when the manufacturing facility in the U.S. was shut down and so they had to get it emergency approved from another facility from overseas. AI to sign all kinds of waivers of what I know that I'm taking something that didn't come from a U.S. facility. I had special inspection processes, everything that came in with FDA OCI. And to your point, like those instances are so rare that yes, they don't flow regularly across borders, nor should they. It's an emergency situation when like a U.S. plant goes down, like remember a year ago when one of the tornadoes that we just talked about destroyed a plant down in North Carolina? Like those are emergencies where you might pull from your own supply overseas. But other than that, no, those markets need to stay separate.
Yeah. All right. What else happened in the news this week?
The other one that I saw, which I found, fantastic. You and I think previously discussed the wonderful case that Gilead had brought about their counterfeit HIV drugs, the case that they've been bringing. And a federal judge has ordered that the defendant had to pay the drug maker Gilead Sciences $31 million in restitution. And so the criminal, at this point is a criminal, it's not even alleged anymore. The criminal was part of a scheme where he had convinced HIV patients to sell their full or empty bottles of HIV medications, which the defendant then resold with forged Drug Supply Chain Security Act documentation. So he forged the documentation, filled it with something that was definitely not the medicine, and sold it to a wholesaler named Script Wholesale. And then for the empty bottles, he filled them with whatever he could fill in case it was just anti-allergy medicine, candy, other drugs, like all kinds of things he just filled them with. Total number of bottles sold that they were able to prove was almost 17,000. And they were able to prove that because of that, they lost $31 million in potential revenue. And the judge awarded $31 million in potential revenue to Gilead. And so I love this case because if you think about it, you and I talk about this, all counterfeiters care about is money. They do. They don't care about the ethics. They don't care about the life stay in danger. They don't care about the fact that they withhold critical medicine from patients. All they care about is money. So when a judge goes and says, I'm going to take what you actually care most about here clearly, which is your assets, I love that. I just completely love that.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to get 31 million. I haven't looked into all the court filings for this individual, but I'm guessing he did not have $31 million in the bank to seize. Yeah. There have been, this is part of a really, well, I should say first, this is an old trick, right? Mm. This whole idea of taking medicine, buying it from patients and reselling it, or taking an empty bottle and putting stuff in it. It's not a new trick. It's been done for at least 2 decades, if not longer. What's new to me is that you can actually detect these really well now with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act.
Right.
And in fact, in this case, this individual is documented as having sold his medicine that he obtained and diverted to Scripps Wholesale in Brooklyn. And I have a pharmacist who actually had a story that we've told and was in the Wall Street Journal, who bought a product from Scripps Wholesale, which he then stopped before giving it to a patient. He's a Texas pharmacist. I would call him a hero. I mean, I have a lot of respect for pharmacists. They're my favorite part of the supply chain. And he actually accidentally did a trace. He was looking to see if he'd gotten the correct price for medicine. He was not necessarily looking for suspicious stuff, but what he found accidentally was that the wholesaler who he usually used that this medicine supposedly went through said, no, that never went through our warehouse. Whatever you're holding must be fraudulent. And he was like, well, I'm not giving that to a patient. So this is easier to find now because of the serialization, the serial numbers on all of our medicine, which makes me a super big fan of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. It's not that those Gibson guitars do not have a legally mandated serial number and record retention requirement on them.
They do not. But to your point, something that goes in your body and something that is medicine, right? Especially think about with Gilead, the Gilead drugs. Those were pills, right? Correctly, I'm correct that those were pills. But similar schemes like this happen with injectables, right? So for me, it's the DSCSA. I fully agree with you. It is so wonderful, but it's so wonderful because just think about how unhygienic this scheme is. So you're collecting bottles from previous users. I have no idea how you treat them. You and I both have seen actual operations of pharmaceutical manufacturers, how highly sterilized, hygienic, how highly controlled that entire environment is. And from the moment the bottle is, bottle syringe, whatever it is closed, how detailed, secure, cold storage, whatever it is, that entire process is to make sure that something that is intended to heal a human is made correctly. And these criminals just grabbing some old bottles, washing them out with dishwash soap, if they even, right, refill it with whatever roughly looks like that. It is criminal. It is criminal. And so I love the fact that they're like, yes, I know you don't have $31 million, but I make sure I get every single cent you have. And I put it in a way that they now have restitution in a way that whenever you get assets, they will get them for the rest of it's just, that is wonderful. And the last thing to point out here, the awesome thing we discussed it last time, the interplay that Gilead had between their civil litigation together with the criminal litigation and how they work together with the DOJ to make sure that the full extent of the law on both sides was applied here, was like a case study. Hopefully will be written on it one of these days, but it was a beautifully beautifully executed investigation.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, I think, the trademark enforcement, the Lanham Act work, which is the piece of legislation that created sort of the trademark protections, has been used for a long time. But over the past 4 years, Gilead Sciences and Patterson Belknap, specifically my colleague Jeffrey Potter, who's a partner over there, has done an amazing bit of work to show how a company can use private civil litigation to pave the way for criminal consequences. And the joke I have is always that, Jeffrey will bankrupt your counterfeiter who's counterfeiting your product, leaving them with no resources to mount much of a criminal defense when the DOJ comes behind him and, appropriately prosecutes you for the criminal act of endangering people. And before we leave this, I want to just touch on one more aspect of this crime, which is that those particular medicines, those 1 pill a day HIV medicines that are critical to both keeping your HIV undetectable and untransmittable and also keep you alive, are typically sold in a sealed bottle with a 30-day supply. And so in the cases where they're using bottles that were empty, if they didn't divert full bottles and they're putting stuff in them, they're giving these to people who have a compromised immune system in many cases, right? They're more at risk of harm
that's incredible.
From that kind of crime than even normally. And I think that's, like I said, they're long past having a conscience about the consequences of their actions. And so, going after them for the $31 million is probably great. But I think it's a particularly vulnerable population that they're targeting with this crime.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see.
Couldn't agree more.
That they did this. Also, the assistant U.S. attorney on this case, Joseph Tartakovsky, is actually here in the San Francisco office of the Northern California District. I've actually spoken to him once or twice before on other cases, including the prosecution of a cosmetic physician here who was buying on counterfeit, actually, and foreign cosmetic injectables and giving them to patients. She pled guilty last year, and I think paid about $1 million in fines and restitution for her crime.
Well, we talked about the injectables last week, so that's another crazy business. So, but no, lovely seeing this case. What else do you have this week?
Well, so this week, Jenny Wei, who is, I believe, the chief pharmacy officer and chief pharmacist from the Ohio State Board of Pharmacy, did a live demo on stage at the American Society for Pharmacy Law Conference, where she live verified a medicine serial number and other data using a new product from the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy called Pulse. Pulse is a tool that allows pretty much everybody in the supply chain, including regulators like the Ohio Board of Pharmacy, to use to check for valid products and to see if they're real. It actually lets you also do a medicine trace, although that process is longer in how it happens than what she could have done on stage. But I've been watching, as I watch the DSCSA rollout, what tools pharmacists and wholesalers and healthcare professionals would have available to them. NABP built this product called Pulse. They're giving it away for free to members of the supply chain to do verifications like Jenny did, as well as traces like people will have to do. And I think it's really cool, and it's a really great milestone that she was able to live do this demo. It's pretty cool.
That is very, very cool. Well, first of all, shout out to my now home state of Ohio. It is so wonderful. If you think about how far the DSCSA has come, right? Like that law was passed 14 years ago at this point, right? 2010, I think, was when it was signed into law.
2012, I think.
Yeah. So, how far it has come. And I know that it was incredibly complicated to implement. Manufacturers, distributors have spent hundreds of millions getting this implemented. I also know that it was, a big deal for pharmacies to get ready for this and be able to comply with it. And I know there was a lot of heartburn on everybody's plate for a while that it was a big undertaking. But to now see it live and alive it's a wonderful thing. And, for me, it always comes back down to, like you, I travel a lot, right? And I travel a lot overseas. And I travel with my own medicine. I do. I carry antibiotics. There's certain medicines I take with me. And I take them with me because I have been in places before where I didn't have them with me and I got sick. And then somebody gives you something. And I have no idea, I can't read it, the language on the packaging. But more importantly, I have no idea, because I know the high counterfeit rates in certain countries, as I said, Africa, some Southeast Asia, where you're playing Russian roulette, literally, with what you're getting. And so to have something where you can just go beep, and this is real. I think the next step there, at one point in time, I would almost hope that it becomes a consumer app where a consumer can do this. So I think it's fantastic. It shows why America has the safest supply chain they do, because we're a closed supply chain, so we keep it nice and tight with all registered players. So no, I think that's awesome. That's awesome that it's live.
Yeah, and the folks at the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy working on Pulse are they're doing a lot of the work, not just to build this product, but also to sort of corral all the stakeholders to work together for buy-in for the product. And being a not-for-profit, they're not doing this to basically become the Uber of drug product verification. They're doing it to secure the supply chain, because that's what the supply chain needs. I mean, it's not having a profit motive in building a product like this, I think, is a huge and necessary part. And I root for them every time I see them do some new development, including their new pilot they're doing on serial number decertification, right? In theory,
nice. Yeah.
When a pharmacist dispenses a bottle, it should mark the serial number as dispensed, and it should never be verifiable again anywhere in the supply chain. Like, for example, if that patient sells that bottle to a fixer, like we heard about earlier in the news.
That's right.
That doesn't happen now, but NABP is actually doing a pilot in South Africa of serial number decertification, and I'm looking forward to a future in which that happens in the U.S. We're not close right now, but we already have a great system. It provides a lot of protection. It's got work to be done, but NABP is showing the way about how it can happen.
No,
what else you got in the news, man?
Laid a great foundation.
What else have you got in the news?
So another, this last week has had some really very cool, unique new things. So the one thing that really caught my eye, and I hadn't seen this before, Amazon, together with the brand Longchamp, they have filed a joint lawsuit against individuals who were accused of selling counterfeit Longchamp products on Amazon's platform. And that's one of the first cases that I'm aware of where Amazon, together with a brand, is actually suing someone for doing that. So the defendants allegedly used fraudulent seller accounts and falsified documents to distribute fake versions of Longchamp's iconic Le Pillage, I'm probably mispronouncing that, handbags. And Amazon has since removed the infringing listings, issued refunds, and this really is an unprecedented collaboration. Like, I hadn't seen that before, where a platform together with a brand will take a legal action. And it shows that, certain platforms like Amazon really take great pride into the accountability. It's good to see that. I want to see more of that. And so these kind of like corporations are really great. And, again, it hits them in the pocketbook, because Amazon can, take assets that they have, so there's a wonderful piece to all of that. And so I thought that was a very cool new thing that I hadn't seen like this before.
Yeah, and I think I hope we're gonna start to see that. I don't know if people don't know about these platforms because they're pretty obscure, but there are pharmacy to pharmacy sales platforms similar to Amazon Marketplace, but where you have to be a pharmacy to buy and sell. And they're really new. There used to be only like one or two players. Now there's at least 8. And there's been some counterfeit product sold through these and some diverted product. And I'm hoping that the kind of brand protection programs that Amazon and eBay have in place where they partner with brand owners come to those platforms as well. I think my employer, PSM, may have something to say about that in the future, but I can't talk about that.
Well, it always comes down to, and for me, and I don't want to anger anybody that works for a platform if they listen to this, but I know the argument sometimes is brought by some of like, we can't possibly technologically do that and all of that. And I don't always fully buy that argument. I think when there's a will, it can be done. The reason why I say it is there's a lot of things where things get controlled. For example, for CSAM material, that gets controlled, that gets very, very tightly monitored. And I think if there's a will there, and if a company says, you know what, this is more important, societal expectation on this is higher than just looking sheerly at the bottom line and saying, no, this is important, that what is sold on our platform is genuine. I think it will be important. It will especially important, and we should do this in a future episode, especially with the advent of AI. And the reason why I say that is now with AI, the speed with which you can create listings has become lightning speed. So you got to figure out, how do you stay ahead of the counterfeiters, right? As technology gets better and better. So I think it would be more and more in the interest of Amazon and other platforms, because they don't want to be associated with there's all kinds of bad stuff on this platform. So, and I love that this is an additional step where they're saying, not only will we take bad listings down, but we'll join in lawsuits where we think people were just really egregious with our platform. And so I think that's a nice step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think I haven't bought any auto parts online. I buy all my auto parts at O'Reilly here in San Francisco. But eBay Auto Parts or eBay Autos has some guarantee about it always being a part that fits your car, which I think is, and probably also not counterfeit, right? Like we've seen some people selling counterfeit airbag parts that have resulted in physical harm to the drivers of those cars and passengers. And I know that there's a whole anti-counterfeiting coalition of auto parts makers that have strong ties with the online marketplaces like eBay and Amazon. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more of that in medicine.
Yeah, the firm I work for, we have previously worked with the automotive OEM parts on that issue, and it's a real problem. And the core of the issue for them is they have a completely open supply chain, meaning anybody can buy from anybody. So when you buy brake pads, it's normally not like for the real car that you buy the car off the lot, but it's for when you get something repaired, because that dealer will buy from a platform and that platform buys from wherever. And the brake pads that look fine and are supposed to be Brembo or whatever are actually sawdust pressed to look like Brembo. And then when you hit the brakes at 200 miles an hour, the brake pads let you know that they were not Brembo. And it's really hard because it's completely open system. And they have had a very hard time corralling that down. So, the automotive market, you got to be very careful when you go online and you go to anything that is not the brand like O'Reilly or some like larger in-person shop that has a pretty tight supply chain. There's a lot out there.
I just want to say for the record that I've actually never driven a car 200 miles an hour, and I probably won't with my current risk profile at the age of 57.
Fair. Neither have I. Got close, but not 200. Yes.
That's right, because you've driven on the Autobahn. I have not.
I driven in Germany, so the highest I got to, I think, was like 160-ish, 170. But yes.
All right. One last story that caught my eye this week. So last week, Forbes had a story about counterfeit bourbon becoming a bigger problem. Mm. And I've seen lots of stories about counterfeits in the high-end wine industry as well. I don't drink anything that costs more than about $40 a bottle, and that's only on the splurge. So I'm not sure I'm at risk of this. But in this particular Forbes article, they cited a new trend of criminals purchasing empty bottles of high-end bourbon off of online marketplaces and then filling them with lower-end product. And it's interesting. eBay and the other marketplaces, Amazon Marketplace, they don't allow you to buy and sell alcohol, but they do allow the
Mhm.
sales of empty bottles. We actually found PSM in my work found during the pandemic empty COVID vaccine vials for sale on eBay, and I actually bought one of them. The authors at Forbes were encouraging readers to check out any online website selling high-end alcohol, and if they promise to ship anywhere in the U.S., to be on guard, because that's actually not how it works. As you know, living in Ohio, you can't just randomly ship any kind of alcohol to Ohio.
That's correct.
It's got some state regulation. So if an online website selling you bourbon tells you they can ship to any of the 50 states without hesitation, that's probably a sign that they're fraudulent.
Yeah, I gotta watch for that. And it's obviously that breaks my heart, as you know, big bourbon fan, and so it's really tricky. It's really hard to detect it because, to your point, I can acquire used bottles easily if I figure out how to penetrate the recycling market, literally, where people will dispose of bottles, and then I clean them, rinse them, I put a fake label on it, which the labels are not that hard to necessarily duplicate. And then I put a brown liquid in it, right? And until you take that first swig and you're like, well, that sure ain't the brand I thought I'm drinking. And now again, the piece in here is, and that's where I think we'll get interested into where things will go here. It's something you're ingesting, right? So it should be something where you can actually authenticate very quickly, is this real? I show you one example. You have shown tell, I've shown tell. So in my office, I'm not drinking in my office, okay? This is literally something here for work. So this is a bottle of...
It's too early in the morning for us to have a drink.
That's right. So this is a bottle of Cask 23, very nice bottle. And so they have this authentication label on there that they started putting on about 3-4 years ago. And it's actually a really cool label. It has a QR code on it. You hit the QR code. The QR code takes you to a website. And the website then says, you can't really probably see this on camera, but there's like a dot matrix on here. And it then says, with this label, your dot matrix should look like this. And it's a randomized dot matrix. And you look, and then you hit the dot matrix. So it's a double verification feature that then says, yes, this is an authentic bottle that is here, that was only sold once. And they actually do, when the bottle was sold at wholesale, they check it as this was sold. And so, because it's only being distributed by the distillery themselves. So it's a really cool thing where high-end brands are starting to add these kind of features into it. But it doesn't happen yet. So to your point, yes, I think for consumers always, if you are looking for that, really hard to find Blantons that you really wanted to get, that is tough to find, and all of a sudden there's a website that says, yep, I got all of that, and they're $30 or $40, I would take a deep breath, and maybe that's not going to be really Kentucky's finest. So, it takes a lot of consumer vigilance to make sure, hey, and understand what you're buying, where you're buying, and if the price is too good to be true, and something that's really hard to find, all of a sudden you find it. Take a double take, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of products that don't have a legal framework for supply chain tracing and record keeping have implemented such a thing, and that I think protects you against a wholesale counterfeit that came out of nowhere. But I don't think that system necessarily protects you from someone buying the empty bottle and refilling it, right? Because the bottle is actually the real bottle. It'll pass verification. What nobody knows is, did that initial sale wholesaler sell it to somebody else who sold it to you?
Yeah.
But it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. I'm with you. It's better than nothing. So, ideally, if Saint Michel is watching, how I would have put that label, I would have put the label in up here, like on top, because at that moment, the moment you open the bottle, it destroys the label. Like I can't reuse the authentication label. I have it here; it's still intact. So, you're right. There's probably additional things that can be done here. So I shall continue my research with this wine over the weekend and we'll let you
Yeah.
know what I find.
All right. Well, we'll try and do another podcast next week before everybody disappears for the holiday. But let me read us out. You have big plans for the holiday, or are you staycationing?
We are going to Europe, seeing family, and we're going to do a little side trip to Norway to try to see the Northern Lights, which will be hopefully exciting and will work out. And but most importantly, seeing family in Europe, and I'm beyond excited. How about you?
My college student's going to come home. We're going to go skiing for
Oh,
a couple days, which is, oh my God, so expensive now. And we'll have a lot of fun though. He's a hoot. My daughter is also getting over what I think is strep throat. So hopefully everybody will be well at the same time in our house. We'll see if that happens.
fingers crossed. Wellness to you all.
All right. Well, the Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner of this production. Podcast was produced by Elizabeth Rude. Podcast management by Sarah Imber Safdar. And for Sven Bergmann and myself, Shabbir Imber Safdar, thanks for listening. We'll see you in a week or so. Bye-bye.